Welcome to Split Picks. Craig, the host, had big plans for the series this year. An episode every month. Well, now it's almost the end of October, and welcome to the first episode of Split Picks for 2024. My name's Jim. I am not Craig.
Wait, I have questions.
Yeah, what's your question? Come at me.
Yeah, why isn't Craig here?
He is currently in the Well of Souls. No, I think he's just really busy.
That's not an excuse.
I think he's well occupied. You're right. You are being disserviced by not having Craig here.
Terry, we got Jim here. Let's.
Yeah, you know. No, I'm sorry. I got aggressive there.
You're right, and I apologize. Welcome back to Split Picks. This is it's a special Halloween spooky. It's slashed picks. It's stabbed picks. I don't know, something like that.
Right.
Let me introduce your voices. I have the other. Well, yeah. Let me introduce you guys. This is Terry. I was gonna say Terry Chiu, but your thing says Terry Leung.
Okay, so I don't like my dad, and so that's why I took Long. But then that ship has sailed. Like I use it when I can get away with it non-legally. Okay. But then the ship has sailed for people who know me as Chiu.
Okay.
And so also I have like the classic trope of forever unreconciled father issues of having, now that my dad is like super dead, and so I have to now carry the burden of his memory and the unreconciled bond. So that's also partly why I just let you just like be there. And so, but then I also still like don't like him enough to like fully let him have it. And so I just deal with the confusion that it besets on people. Okay. So I just go back and forth between the two. But
do you have a preference for today?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just Terry. Yeah, I mean, you can. I kind of just put them next to each other, but like it just depends on the day,
sure,
or the setting. But Mark knows me as Chiu, and you know me as you. I guess
Chiu is how I talked to you in the past, but
okay,
I've seen them both. Yeah. I've seen them both written, so I didn't know.
Yeah,
our researchers told me that your name is short for Terrible Lizard. Is that true?
I don't know how you found that out. I take issue with that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We're gonna have to talk after this.
I'm sorry. It felt like it made sense to me because I would imagine you would be a terrible lizard on account of the warm blood.
I mean, that's fine. I just now own a quarter of everything you ever make from now on.
You know what? Good luck getting anything out of that. But you're welcome to it. The other voice that's with me today, Mark Hanson. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jim. Thanks for having me. that sounded like a real stock response, but
yeah, you've been
I'm on a podcast.
You've had attitude problems since the start, Mark.
Yeah,
Mark. The producers told me that you prepared a song you wanted to sing for us.
Ooh, no, I don't do that. Okay. I'm sorry.
You sure?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm good.
I should kick the band out then.
I only ever did that at my my job interview at Rogers Video when I was 16 years old and really wanted to impress them. So
yeah, what'd you say?
I had happy birthday because it was the birthday of one of the interviewers.
I see.
The managers. Yeah, never felt so humiliated in my life.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly embarrassing.
Yeah, I really wanted to work at a video store when I was a teenager. So
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
And I still do.
Me too. Oh, this is why we bond. This is why we're kindred.
Yeah, right? Who didn't?
Yeah. Hey, Jim, what's your most humiliating memory? Let's just go right into it.
Humiliating. Oh man, I don't feel like I don't have it on tap. You need to remind me with a sense memory like I did to you guys.
What was the sense memory for us?
Well, I just brought you into your complicated father feelings.
Oh, yeah.
And then I reminded Mark about the time he was forced to sing as a 16-year-old auditioning for a job.
Yeah, it's weird that they made me do that. It wasn't even my decision to. They asked if I would do that, and then I willingly did it, which is my problem. But I guess, why would they ask for me
Yeah.
to even do that. That seems like a weird.
Yeah, a managerial figure asking a 16-year-old.
right?
That's them telling you.
I mean,
to do
these
it.
people, they were only like 3 or 4 years older than me. So
Sure.
But
So
yeah,
they were
it's
bullies,
A
is what you're
little,
saying.
yeah, basically. Kind of some worker rights issues going on at Rogers Video back in the day.
Let me briefly introduce the other thing that's different about Split Picks today, because so far fully normal. Except the format of this show typically is we pick a filmmaker or musician, more recently mostly filmmakers, and we look at a couple of their works that sort of are defining elements of their output that are sort of maybe opposite ends of the spectrum of whatever their work is that they do, and we sort of look at how those give us a bigger picture of who the person is and what it is they do. And today we are looking at 2 films by James Wan, but they are not that different. In some ways they are, but we're looking at Insidious and Insidious 2. And normally we have each person sort of pick a film to champion and to sort of say, like, this is the best, the most defining. But I think in this case, part of the reason that we started doing this is because, Terry, talking to you, whatever that was, 85 months ago, you brought up the idea that you sort of have to watch the 2 films as a single unit. Do you want to talk at all about
In hindsight, yeah. So right off the bat, I disagree with you saying that they're different films, because it does honestly feel like they're the same movie. It really does. If you kind of, like, you wouldn't know if you came in not knowing what release year each film was, and you don't pay that, and you don't have a degree in, I don't know, like anthropology, so like you're not really paying attention to like how like the kids look like suspiciously like not exactly the same age.
Sure.
If you look really closely, then it would kind of just fly past you that it was made 3 years apart. But
Sure.
I honestly think that speaks to the craftsmanship and I think the thoughtfulness, just the genuine, unsarcastic thoughtfulness that went into the production of each, because they are different, but in some very deliberate ways, but then also in a seamless way, it feels very just decisive in its ability to just be 2 of the same, like 2 of like in hindsight, because it is weird, because if you watch, because I would never know what it's like to watch just Insidious. Sure. I only knew, like, I knew of its existence, right? When it came out. And I actually knew about, without even watching the movie or actually knowing anything about the movie, a former school classmate told me the ending of the first Insidious. So I had actually always had this... what?
Brutal, man.
So rude.
I know. Like, I just knew there was a scary old woman, and I knew that the scary old woman takes over the guy at the end.
Yeah.
And then the photo, and then it's like, so I just knew like that part fundamentally. And so I had, it's definitely a very specific memory of and perspective of Insidious without having actually seen it, and only carrying that knowledge the whole time. And then even up to the point when Insidious 2 came out, I just whenever I look at the poster or whatever, right, with the scary old lady as a silhouette and like going up against Rose Byrne with a hammer and the kids, right? It's like, it's all based off this like this knowledge of like not having seen any of it, but just knowing that there's a scary old lady that ruins everything in the first one, and then is like still there in the second one. And it's so that I think that's partly why my obsession. It's like, it's almost like let's see, if you kind of say, if you grow up with an idea of the boogeyman, but you don't actually know like the story of the boogeyman, right? You just know it exists, so you have this kind of understanding from just on a very surface level. But then eventually, like, you read the biography of the boogeyman, and it turns out he just needed a hug, But it's like it's and his parents were really fucked up, and so it was kind of that thing. I will always know what it's like to have just to like directly seen both of them back to back on the same night. And so I'm coming from there. But like, as someone who has that benefit, right, of being able to separate kind of the like, physiological creation of the films. I can appreciate it on like a really kind of art, like in its most transcended form, right? When they're just the movies that are done, and so you put them side by side and you go like, does this, does this make sense? And so to me, it does.
I've only seen them based on your recommendation. I hadn't watched either of them till months ago, and so now I've watched them twice, but also just immediately following each other both times. So I also have only experienced them as one long movie.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, well, I had a much different experience than you guys then with these movies. I'm going to, get up on my high horse a little bit and say that I was privileged enough to be able to see the first Insidious at its world premiere at TIFF back in the day, at Midnight Madness. And when I was like going to TIFF really hardcore and, big James Wan fan. And obviously I was super stoked to see this. And it was kind of like in that period when he was not, as big as he is now. Like he hit it big with Saw, but then it kind of like dipped a bit and he was kind of like in the wilds. And this movie, and it was like made like completely independently. And he came to it. I remember they came to TIFF like mere hours after they locked picture on it. Like they came to, like he was sleep deprived. Like they came to this midnight showing being like, I just locked this like 6 hours ago or something like that. So that was really cool. And it was like a really great audience. And I think some things maybe were changed a bit from that time to when it was released generally after that, like a few nits, but it had no like studio backing. I remember afterwards there was like a bidding war between like suits outside in the lobby for it. So it was a really cool experience. And he was like super excited about it. Just super, like him and Lee Winnell were both just like, this is like, we wanted to make our Poltergeist. We wanted to just make like the scariest thing we could think of. And here it is. And it was great. It was an awesome screening. It's like one of the best kind of Midnight Madness screenings I was at, like ever really. And it was just scary. It was just so terrifying. I loved the sort of practical effects, the practical creature design, production design of it. And it was just really cool. So then jump forward 3 years, I guess, because I think it was like 2010 when I first saw Insidious. And then when the sequel came out, I was kind of, I don't know if I was expecting too much or if I was wary, but I just remember really not liking it at the time. I know. I'm sorry, Terry. I'm sorry. I just like, I hated it. But
I'm going to walk away for a bit.
I know. But it's like, it's one of those things, like, I don't even really know why. Like, I saw it. I think maybe I was just, the experience of the first one was so great that it just like, this wasn't going to live up to it. Maybe I was thinking it was going to live up to it. And it just didn't work for me. So for years, I just had this memory of like hating the second one. And I've seen the other ones too and not really cared either way about, I don't know how you guys feel, or Terry, how you feel about the other sequels to Insidious.
Not canon.
Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of, but for some reason I never had the level of like distaste for those that I did for the second one, even though I don't necessarily think the second one's a worse movie. I think it was just because like for some reason it felt like James Wan let me down or something, and I just don't. And I know that's kind of a silly thing, but I hadn't rewatched either of those two for years and years, but I did rewatch them just the other day, back to back, like you said, Terry. So I did get that experience finally. But for me, initially, it was weird. Like I had this great experience with the first one, and there was a huge gap, and then I threw on the second one and was like, I don't know, this kind of sucks. So I don't know if it was just I wasn't feeling it at the time or whatever, but yeah.
Did you feel like watching them back to back the other day changed anything for you, or are you still feeling like number two's kind of
you know what, I will. So yeah, I'm still not crazy about number two, but I did like it a lot more than I did the first time. But I also will admit I maybe didn't think the first one was as great as I originally thought either. It almost tempered them out a bit watching them back to back, I think. But with the second one, I totally liked it more. There's just some things that really still don't work for me with it. but I know Terry's thoughts on it, and I've read Terry's Letterboxd reviews, and I totally get where Terry's coming from. I like it in theory. The idea of a duology in theory is very cool. It just still comes off a little bit more like kind of one of those like tossed off cash grab sequels to me a little bit, because I don't necessarily understand why James Wan maybe even did it, especially considering he was working on The Conjuring at that point too. He'd already kind of like moved on to, not to say he should have left Insidious behind. It just didn't, it seemed like he was more committed to The Conjuring at the time, and this was like kind of an afterthought film. But that's, I know Terry's seething with rage right now.
I feel like, well, I mean, you're totally wrong, but like I have like my reasoning behind it is The Conjuring is actually, here's the thing, because I've maybe it's the contrarian in me, because people love, as far as if they're fans, then people love the first Insidious, and then they don't like Insidious 2, but then they love The Conjuring, right?
Well, I will say, just to cut in on you, I'm not, The Conjuring for me, I did like when I first saw it, but when I rewatched that a few years ago, that didn't hold up for me really at all.
No?
I'm actually kind of off The Conjuring in general. The Conjuring held up for me less than Insidious did, I guess. I feel like the Insidious was stuck with me more than The Conjuring.
Well, Conjuring was more old-fashioned, right? It was more this kind of old-fashioned, very photo, kind of like photogenically filmed kind of modern take on an old-fashioned story, whereas Insidious is much more high concept and goes out there and goes like into the straight up the sci-fi genre realm. And so the thing about Conjuring is like, I read this, there was this article online, this person who was doing this reparations article for Insidious 2 and talking about how Insidious, The Conjuring was the movie for the people who like the first half of Insidious, while Insidious 2 was for people who like the second half of Insidious, right? Because there's that the vantage point of Insidious where it kind of like everything changes of whether people are still on board or not is when you see the red lipstick monster. Yeah. Because as soon as you see him, you're either on board or not, because there's the half of the audience who are just so pissed off that they saw what it looks like and they can no longer be scared, and then the other half which still don't find it scary, right? The red lipstick monster, but are so down for it because it has changed the game of the movie. Yeah. Right? Because rather than just being a scary, what does he look like, kind of like almost just obvious kind of movie where like, you have to wait till the very end to find out what it looks like and all that, it totally undoes it, and then now you just know what it looks like. It just looks like an idiot, right? It just looks like a red like idiot, right? Who's just like a doofus, right? And the movie becomes a lot more than it just being a scary haunted house movie. It's a lot more about the supernatural fantasy genre, like mythology that surrounds it, right? And so I mean, like, and I'm all for kind of like genre pop culture stuff. So like that's kind of like the bones that got tickled in me, and I just love the idea that it for me, when horror movies no longer become scary, when they like deliberately go like do that arc where it goes into the fun parts and the whole like they fight back themes and facing kind of trauma and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so the thing about the thing about anyway, wait, so coming back to like The Conjuring, right? So to me, The Conjuring was pretty much a 2-hour intermission between the two Insidiouses, because he made that right before Insidious 2. Yeah. Yeah. And so if you actually watch the three of them, like all three of them back to back, it's actually very brilliant. It's like almost trilogically brilliant, because if you watched Insidious and Patrick Wilson gets possessed at the end of the first one, and it's just like the scary old lady, instead of going into Insidious 2, James Wan's like, yo, wait, we'll be right back. We're gonna now I'm gonna take Patrick Wilson and we're gonna go into a whole other universe And now Patrick Wilson's like a troubled priest, right? Like a troubled like a demonologist, right? Who's like has to like overcome his fear of his wife, you know, getting like fucked up by the demons, and like he becomes a superhero exorcist at the end, right? So this whole time you're watching like The Conjuring, and he's going through this like whole hero arc, where by the end of it, like the witch like is like levitating up in the air, and it's like a whole other like supernatural like genre like action final battle, and he's like, I gotta do this, you know, with like the cross and all that, and it's like super badass. And this whole time you're just thinking about like how like poor Patrick Wilson in the Insidious universe is like held hostage, and he's like basically like in like NHL like metaphor, he's like in the penalty box, right? Like the whole he's in the penalty box like this whole time going like, hey, what about me, you know? And then you have to like wait, you have to get through all of The Conjuring before you like get to Insidious 2, which they both come on the same year, Conjuring and Insidious 2 back to back. Yeah, so it's very deliberate. Like The Conjuring was a summer movie, and Insidious 2 was a Halloween movie, and so when you get into the Insidious 2, we waited like 3 years and a whole other movie for them to go like, okay, now back to Insidious 2. And it's actually like brilliant. So when you watch it with that kind of that like perspective, there's just no way you can rationalize Insidious 2 as a cash grab. Like right there, just on a methodology, on a filmmaking level, like there's not. If it was a cash grab, he would have just gone straight into Insidious 2, I feel. But I don't also think
maybe it's just the cynic in me, but I feel like I look at, maybe because I guess, you know, I work in the industry, as in I work in a video store, but like I just see, I'm aware of things, you know, I guess trends or whatever, and I just feel like, you know, James Wan is a guy that works in a studio system, right? And seems to have always wanted to aspire to work in the studio system. And Insidious to me was a brilliant calling card film after he kind of flunked out in the studio system, because Dead Silence never really hit, Death Sentence never really hit, although I liked both of those films too. And then this, what I like about the first Insidious is it's like kind of a return to the original Saw, where it's like a guy being like, I gotta just put everything into this movie and just like make it the best I can make it, because this is like, I got nothing to lose anymore. Like this is just movie making, right? And I feel like Insidious hit really big. It was a huge blockbuster, but it made a lot of money on a small budget. And that opened up a lot of opportunities for him, one of which was The Conjuring. I'm not necessarily sold on the idea that he would have even made The Conjuring if Insidious didn't blow up like it did.
Oh no, for sure.
And then with Insidious 2, I feel like, like I understand what you're saying in theory. I just feel like seeing where his career has gone since, it's just been Conjuring universe production credits. He jumps to the Fast and Furious series. He goes to the DC universe. With Malignant inside, because I do quite like Malignant, I don't feel like James Wan has done anything that's really like hit hard for me since that original Insidious. I mean, with the exception of Malignant. And maybe that's just because I'm a cynic and I just like have such a distaste for a lot of like studio movies, and I feel like, and so in some ways Insidious kind of, because it's got James Wan and Jason Blum involved in it, and those two I feel like are kind of directly responsible for almost like the Marvelization of mainstream horror with like all these universes and everything. And that's just not my thing. I feel like I don't necessarily need all the lore in the different universes. I just kind of like appreciated Insidious for what it was, like a direct, sharp, like really fun, tight little funhouse horror movie. Then all this lore that comes at me after, it's like, yeah, okay, but I mean, like, I don't even feel like these characters were necessarily that well developed in the first place, so it's hard for me to fully get on board with a lot of that lore. But I will admit, like, that's not necessarily, like, I haven't seen, like, a superhero movie in, like, 10 years or more. Like, that's just not my thing. And I feel like I have this, like, irrational sort of, like, annoyance with James Wan for, like, kicking off the Conjuring universe, and, like, Jason Blum for all these stupid Blumhouse movies that come out that I just, like, really couldn't care less about. And I feel like Insidious kind of kicked that off, you know? Like, that's kind of like they made both of their names on that a little bit, and then just like went right to like the studio jobs. And it's like, I would believe James Wan had more to say if he made more things like Malignant instead of like 2 Aquaman movies and a Fast and Furious sequel and producing a bunch of Conjuring universe sequels, which get progressively worse and worse every one that comes out.
It's funny to leverage the franchisization of horror at some dudes who started working in the 2000s, when I feel like from Nightmare on Elm Street, Jason Voorhees. I feel like starting a franchise with something and then just loring for 35 years is sort of the domain of the horror movie historically.
And that's fair. I guess it feels more corporate now than it ever did before. I still felt like, the Nightmare on Elm Street series or the Halloween series or like, horror movie series in the past still had like a bit of like an underground low budget, even if they were made by a studio, it was like New Line Cinema or something. There was a bit more of like a street cred to them a bit more. Whereas now it's like a Blumhouse movie or a Conjuring universe movie is no different to me than like Deadpool and Wolverine or something like that. And I never necessarily felt like that before. So, but maybe that's just me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're being an irrational cynic, but that's just no. But I also think you're being unfair to like James Wan as like some like the man who like single-handedly like destroyed the modern film world. I think.
How so? How did he destroy it in your eyes?
How did he destroy it?
Yeah.
No, you're saying he destroyed it.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying he destroyed it like it was like
in a positive way.
Yeah, he like messed it up. I don't think he destroyed anything. I'm not saying that. I think he just joined a lot of like big timey, like just kind of mainstream film. He's not necessarily a filmmaker that I sort of feel like has a lot of pure like artistic cred to me anymore. But that's just nowadays though. I don't know him. I'm not like I'm sure he's a nice guy or whatever. Like I don't know. I'm not passing any judgments on him or anything.
And for my part, like I'm not like being like irrational. Like he's not my uncle, so it's like I'm not like defending him like personally. I'm just here's the thing. I think I don't even. This is gonna almost sound like a reverse hot take, and this is gonna be a maybe a semi-long ramble, but I don't even think I love his movies that much. I think I'm coming more from this place where there's a lot of intersectionality between artistry and studio filmmaking that like auteur quote unquote. And I'm not that he's not. I don't think he's an auteur. It's just the term itself. So I mean more like on the kind of visionary filmmaking, like individual filmmaking versus studio filmmaking. And I think James Wan's career and choices are at the intersectionality of both of those extremes, which is partly why I think it's easy to so to speak, put the blame on him when he is just one guy or one man who is like navigated this system and where these realities have always existed. He just happens to be like a person who is going through them. And I think two things can be true where you can want to be very, and also I'm just going to jump ahead. I'm very upset that we're actually doing this podcast seriously because I thought we were going to, Mark, we had a conspiracy to go into this and just talk about our feelings.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I didn't even want to do this. So I think it's there. You can do two things at once. You can both want to be an artist and say very individual, very precise, creative things. And then you can also want to navigate through a studio system so that you can either or both influence and change the game of how studio storytelling is done, right? And also be able to reach as many people as possible. I don't think going into the studio system immediately equals you are the enemy or that you are operating on behalf of the enemy. But and I'm saying this as like the most just degenerate, like just DIY filmmaker, right? Who like no one likes and no one wants to see his movies, and it's like I'm just like basically forcing it
for sure. Yeah.
yeah. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's why you have me here. And so it's about kind of having this negotiation between both sides, and I think James Wan going into, because yes, he made Insidious as a result of people not liking his films since Saw, and so going back to like the Saw playbook, but then trying to still do something inventive and new, and so I do think Insidious is a very, very ingenious and very, like, there's a reason why it is such a success, even within a studio supported system, right? Because
I agree. It's like you can see why it blew up. Like,
exactly.
Even watching it again, knowing where the scares are coming from, they still were effective. Like, I really like his trick. Like, I think he has a lot of filmmaking skill. I'm not trying to say he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, like to your point, where you were saying people in suits were like NHL video game fist fighting each other outside, right? Like just like fighting for it. So it was this, again, going back to the whole two things can be true, where you can both be an artist but then also break through the studio system. And I think James Wan is a prime example of someone who can do both. And so the thing about when Insidious came out, it was like, it kind of made like everyone happy, right? And so I think the thing with since then, it's like it's very easy to then break down like someone who you can in that sense consider a hero for, like, you know, being for doing both, being able to be an artist within a studio system when he does, you know, when you then don't like what he does next, or, you know, you kind of pinpoint like the fall of like the mainstream horror back to him, right? Or you can like pinpoint like the fall of modern Hollywood filmmaking to Marvel, right? And things like that. And I think it's easy to do that, but then like lose sight of like the fact that it's not like James Wan went into horror saying like, I'm gonna destroy, you know, like horror. I'm gonna make it into a fucking product, and it's like, you know. And nor did like Marvel, nor did like Kevin Feige go into like Hollywood saying like, I'm gonna fuck up all of you. You're just gonna it's just gonna be Iron Man and Captain America and 4 different actors playing Hulk. You know, it's just like, you're gonna be so confused. You know, it's like they don't go into this with that intent. They go into this because they want to, yes, entertain people and like make money, but then they also want to, I think, like do genuine kind of things within that, because like, I mean, comics and comic book movies inspire people for reasons that like we can't deny, right? It's just that the then monopolization and the kind of the over swarming results, right, of an industry like being taken over, that is not necessarily that one person's fault. It is just the larger system that is rigged to then just like jump into groupthink and then like perpetuate, like, you know, like a thing that was working in one case, but then they don't, like, the system doesn't learn. It just assumes that to then succeed you have to take like anything that works and then milk it out for all it's worth, and then, you know. And so, for example, the whole like franchisization, right? In the case of James Wan, he didn't direct all of those other Conjuring or Insidious movies. He actually like has nothing to do, like, or just about nothing to do creatively with the films that he didn't direct, right? There's a reason he only directed 2 Conjurings and 2 Insidious, right? And like was worked on the stories of both of those. He understands like the system of like, this is like what this is how like things are kind of rigged. So why don't I go and like rig like the game against itself and create these universes, get my money, but then go and like make Aquaman and then get a blank check and then make Malignant. Like, there is no Malignant without his like kind of gaming, like this rigged Hollywood system of, you know, of like, you got to make movies like Aquaman or Fast and Furious 7 and all that, right? Like he did those things knowing that this is how it works, but for you to then get to a place where you can change things from within and fucking like prank everyone so hard with Malignant, right? Like Malignant is like the ultimate prank. It's like the ultimate, like he could have made anything, right? And he got like the blankest check after making Aquaman, like $1 billion, one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And WB said, just like take our, like, you know, suck our dicks. Like, no, like, please let us suck your dick. Like, here's all the money. Like, do whatever you want. And he went and made like the most like studio piss-offing movie possible, and he put it on a, sure, not that many people watched it, and it's still like it's
got some pretty big cult appeal though now.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
at least
for sure. But for the platform,
But no, I agree.
Like in the environment, like his goal was to like basically like have the whole world see it, right? Like he had the biggest platform, and he put it out on the biggest platform. The result is not necessarily what he would have liked, which is like, instead of everyone seeing it, it's like it still became like it was still cult status, right? But the fact that he did it in, it's like if you know, you're playing like I don't even know anything about baseball, but it's like you're playing minor league or whatever, right? And then like you make it so big that it's like, here, like go into like the what is the NHL of like of baseball? It's like the MLB, right? Yeah. It's like, here, come and play in MLB, but you still bring you still end up playing like a mini league, like the most hardcore mini league game within that stadium. So you're not even like, you're barely, that doesn't make any sense. But it's like you still did the thing that your values rooted to, right? And so it's like, you can, at least for me, it's like, we don't know James Wan or is like what he's thinking, but for me, I'm seeing all these things he's doing, right? And it's like there is nothing apathetic about, for example, making Malignant in that setting of post Aquaman 2, right? And so you can tie these things back in this process of elimination of, like, you know, game theory and logic and kind of intent, and I can bring it back to movies like Insidious 2, where he could have, again, he went and made Conjuring, and Conjuring is the result of the success of Insidious, and Conjuring feels a lot more like a studio, old fashioned, still artistic, but is much more like a sophisticated looking movie, right? But then Insidious 2, you look at it, and coming back, I'm actually finding ways to like link back to previous subjects where, like, Jim, you were saying how like the two movies do feel different but also similar. Like Insidious 2 is actually just so much more ghetto looking in some moments than Insidious. Like Insidious does have this sophisticated sleekness throughout in terms of this like haunted, like cold, like colder palette kind of like camera, but then also the camera work is like a lot more, it's closer to in Conjuring than it is to Insidious 2. Insidious 2 actually like goes full DIY in moments. So there's moments where they have these like the camcorders or like and it's like that fast. It's not like 60 frames per second, but it looks very like just home video, and that's particularly in the B plot when they go like the ghost detectives, when they go Scooby-Doo with the like and it's amazing, and like no B plot would ever be this entertaining. Like if it was any other like director, any other movie, I would be fucking like I would be having dreams. I would be dreaming into further. Like I would be so bored. But it's like the most entertaining B plot line with like the relatives and the Specs and Tucker, right? With like the weird camera work and it's just it's like he's telling you like he knows, and you may not like it, you may not think it's working, but I don't see how it is not. These aren't deliberate choices. I think we owe it to, at least for me, I wanna have faith and belief that there is, when you go into the studio system, it doesn't always just end up in the same results, in that like nihilistic kind of, okay, there's only one way this ends, and it ends with you kind of like ruining like the thing that you started, or becoming like a cog or a product. And I think I'm just gonna plug myself, and like I thought Doom Crescendo was gonna be like, I thought I was gonna be accused of selling out. I thought that was gonna be my mainstream movie, because like everyone thought Mangoshake was just too weird and too Indian out there, right? So I thought, all right, why don't I go and make a superhero movie, you know? And then I make it, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is this shit?" You're like, "Oh, we'll just stick with Mangoshake. You're now mainstream movie, you know." And it just made me go like, "Well, it's not like I was actually trying to sell out, but I was also thinking about what, the my worry about going into it was that it's you still have the artistic intent, but then you're also trying to figure out not that I made Open Doom like the genre was because I wanted to sell out or like appeal to like more people, but it was more the I think two things can be true where you can say like, okay, this is more palatable and this functions in a world where like people will give you more attention, but then you take what you get from that attention, or you take the opportunities that come out of that, and you still find a way to be very decisive about, well, like showing that like there's more to it than people would give you credit for, and at least maybe. So I'm done. I just want to let's just get this. I'm done. Yeah.
No, that's fair, man. And I feel like I should. I don't necessarily think I blame. I don't think it's James Wan's fault that mainstream horror is bad or something. Like mainstream horror has always been bad here and there a lot of the time. So yeah, like I
leave
really
my
don't.
Uncle out of this.
Sorry. So yeah, I know, I'm trying to be like, I really am not trying to lay any like grand blame. I guess it's just sometimes hard for me to see him as more than like a producer these days within a system. And yeah, I get like the trying to change the system from the inside. I get that. I'm not totally sure I feel as optimistic about that just myself than you do, but I totally get that. And I do think Malignant rocks, and I do love that he did fit that in and get that out there, and I'd like to see, I guess, more of those kind of movies from him. But yeah, I get the reality is you can't solely make those and have it be at the same kind of budget as he would like it to be. So it is this push and pull. It is this one for me, one for them sort of thing. I guess and because he was really a filmmaker that meant a lot to me, especially as like an aspiring filmmaker back in the day, I thought him coming out of the gate with Saw was like so cool and so inspiring, and I was like so into it. And then with Insidious too, it just, I guess in the last decade or so, I feel like I've had less of a reason to care about like him as an artist as much. But then you've got Malignant in there, which really is like an absolute banger. So yeah, I feel of two minds about it, I guess. I guess just for me, this different, whereas you for like Insidious and Insidious 2, they fit together and they're this really like cool, cohesive product. For me, it kind of represents a bit of the shift between the James Wan I like towards the James Wan I started to lose interest a little bit in. But
here's the thing, Mark. I think if we kind of take a step back, I think part of why we're putting so much focus into James Wan is that, can you actually think of anyone else in his relative position, right, who has done what he has done with the track record and the opportunities that he's had? And no, like at least I can't think of anyone else who has pushed the envelope, who has like been on both like kind of
horror filmmakers that have blown up big, or
I guess. And I see this as like a figure of speech, because even if you can like name someone else, he's
definitely become like a household name, like,
but that's
his
the
own.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
like I'm not denying his success, but
I know.
Yeah.
But like my lord, and then like to add to that point, because I very much understand this, like the argument that as time goes on, right, you feel less inspired by him, because with like more movies he makes and like the more kind of you're seeing like the studio results of it, right? But then we still pinpoint to Malignant, and again, he could have just never made Malignant, right? He had like he was so far past the point where it's like, okay, I can only make like, for example, like, if he's going like, okay, I have no opportunity, so I'm just gonna make Malignant because like I'm in this sphere of like super indie, right? And I will make Malignant because I can't make Fast and Furious 7. It's like, no, he made Fast and Furious 7, he made Aquaman, and then he made Malignant. Like, if that is not the ultimate like hammer drop, like mic drop of I am still here and I am still me, then like I don't know what is.
I mean, I guess I feel like he's kind of he's inadvertently, it's not like he even put himself in the spot, but he's inadvertently kind of gotten himself into a spot where he has to take more responsibility because he just owns so much of like the horror market in the mainstream now. Like there aren't, because you're right, like he's the only guy doing what he's doing along with like Jason Blum, I guess, right? But outside of Blumhouse movies or James Wan produced movies, there's not really a ton of other horror stuff unless it's like an A24 type production that's like coming out. So there's not as many. So I guess he ultimately has to shoulder more because he's responsible for so much of the output now in the mainstream horror market. So
yeah, but he's also not
him, whether he asked for that or not.
But the thing is, he's also not the Disney of horror where he's like snuffing out any other competition. As far as we know, like he's not going out and being like no, none of you can like do the thing either, right? And so the fact that he's not going out and like making himself like the monopoly of mainstream horror, I think speaks to even more about how like others need to be stepping up, right?
Yeah.
And so he's done his part, and he could still be doing more. But then there's also the realities of the studio that he's stuck in, and also the fact that he's been like held hostage by WB for like the last 4,000 years with Aquaman 2, right? With like the whole WB debacle, right? So he's actually been like he's been hostage under 2 studio like catastrophes, like Furious 7, right? With Paul Walker, rest in peace, right? And then him having to like redo the film, right?
Yeah.
And doing a very admirable job. Like the movie will like forever feel haunted, but it's like the fact that he got like the result is what it is, right?
Yeah, I liked Furious 7. I thought he did a good job on it. I didn't have a problem with it.
And so I think like and so even that within that circumstance, right, of him still injecting himself as much as he can and still coming out with within those circumstances with the movie that it is, and a lot of people regard it as the best in that franchise, right?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about like James Wan and his career in general and
the space he occupies in culture.
Maybe gotten away from just like what is the Insidious, the Insidious films there. I guess the other thing, if I had to pinpoint a problem for me with Insidious 2 that was hard for me to get, that kind of turned me off in the end, was the lore or the B plot in terms of like the serial killer ghost, like demon ghost thing.
I've talked with people the scary old woman, Parker Crane.
Just the whole the Parker Crane thing, which
I've talked with people about that. I've talked with.
It just feels like a bit of like a cliche. It just feels like a cliche. Like I've seen that kind of serial killer. I mean, I do think the idea of like a cross-dressing as sort of like a basis for psychopathy is a little bit problematic, but I do think it's just beyond that, kind of just like a cliche. Like we've just seen that a lot, which to me goes against a bit of like the supposed originality of this movie. I feel like he's just taken like a serial killer subplot I've seen in like hundreds of serial killer movies before and being like, oh man, this little kid, got beat up by his evil mother and forced to dress as a girl, so now he's a serial murderer murdering all these women. And it's just like, I don't even know if I needed to know that. Like I kind of liked in the Insidious movies how the ghosts were just ghosts. They were just creepy, spooky little ghosts, and that was kind of all I needed. So,
well, I haven't seen any of those, so I'm good. The only one I've seen of cross dressing is Psycho, and like where he dresses up as like his mom, right? And but other than that, I'm coming in and I'm going like, oh, it's cool,
That's fair. I feel like it's maybe I just watched a lot of serial killer movies when I was a kid. I just feel like that was such like a trope that they just couldn't get away from. And it was just weird to me to see it pop up in this again because I'd kind of forgotten about it. I was like, oh wow, he really, did that too. Okay.
Okay, well, two things. The scary old woman was always played by a dude. I know. Even in the first movie, right?
Yeah. But I don't know if that doesn't justify it for being the person.
Okay, but then two, have you? But then of all the movies where like a traumatized kid grows up to dress up as a serial killer, have you a serial killer old lady? Have you seen one where they travel back in time and the little kid as a haunted ghost has to like go and redeem himself and join the final battle, join the good guys, and then defeat his older evil like ghost self, which has like separated from him and become an entity of itself, and while also defeating his evil mom and therefore finding redemption. And so
Yeah, no, I guess I haven't seen that before.
There.
Yeah, there you go. There. I guess that's original. I guess
I do feel
original.
like it is. Yeah, I've seen. I don't know how many movies he's directed. I think I've seen half. So I'm not a Wan expert, but I do feel like in all the ones, at least the ones you guys are talking about, sort of being the juicy ones, right? With like the first Saw, Insidious, Malignant I haven't seen, but I think this is also true. I would even say Dead Silence, which I saw and didn't particularly like. He is pulling a lot from like 70s, like grimy horror. All of his plots are always referencing that. His aesthetics are always referencing that. For me, that's one of the things I like the most about him, is that you're sort of talking about his space in the industry, and so much of what we look at is like the A24, the like elevated horror, which I hate. I think it's the complete downfall of the industry.
Yeah.
And James Wan has stayed away from that. His movies are just good, solid horror movies that feel like, to me, like they're built on a foundation from a long history of good, solid horror movies, built on dumb plots and high concepts. For me, I think that's a delightful element of them.
Okay, yeah, maybe I wish you went a little sleazier with it. I feel like why is Insidious 2 like Insidious 2 is a PG-13 movie, you know? Sure. Like, but yeah, if you're gonna pull out that sort of like, okay, yeah, like sleazy serial killer, potentially sort of like problematic, you know, gender idea serial killer thing, like then just like fucking go for it, man.
Because
like,
for me,
because you did like you came out on the scene with Saw, right? Which like totally
grimy,
which, you know. Nowadays, looking back, it's kind of like tame compared to other things. But, you know, at the time, like it was coming out like, whoa, this is really serious, you know? Yeah, that kicked off the torture porn thing, right?
What the other thing that I get really jazzed about with James Wan is he has a lot of really beautiful stylistic ideas, a lot of really lovely sort of flourishes, and just sort of like aesthetic moves. And I'm always like, give me more of that, James Wan. I love it whenever he does things, and then he lets a lot of the movie just kind of feel like modern movie, but then sometimes he's like, here's this red window in the stairwell, and anytime we're near the stairwell, there's going to be just red light all over the goddamn place, which is like, makes my heart beat. But it feels like a lot of those moves are like updated, modern. Even there's the one shot, I think in the second one, where she's being interviewed in the police station, and we start out with the camera like a mile away from the police station.
Yeah, you know, I did like
push
that.
In.
Yeah.
His moves are so good, and they feel like he's like pulling from like Argento or like 80s sort of Italian style-y old movies, but doing not their moves, doing sort of updated riffs on their moves. And those guys, Argento in particular, was a super sleazebag. I would love it. I mean, I'm a pile of trash at the bottom of the stairs, you know. But I would love to see James Wan just go full hard.
Well, I think you should watch Malignant.
Jim, your pile of trash has my sponsorship so far. So
thank you. When I watched the first one, I was not super pleased with it. I think Wan again has stylistic things. He's got a lot of tonal and like plot things that are fun. And he's super good at making me uneasy in a way that not a lot of people are good at. And so those things were all like firing for me. But in terms of like a collection of events that add up to a story, I was not that charmed with what it was doing. It left me with a lot of questions. And then the second movie just answered all of the questions from the first movie. I
love that.
So to me, it felt like I had to watch the second one in order to learn how to watch the first. I had to like get through the second one in order to unlock anything from the first one.
You know, like, and this is my earlier point about like when I would have been just so mad. I think I would like if I only had the first movie like back in 2010. If I watched this, and this is partly why I wasn't interested in watching it. Like all I just heard from a classmate about like that it's just a movie where a scary old woman like ruins everything, right? And I'm like, all right, well, I don't need to watch that. It's like the ending sounds so upsetting, right? But then it's only when I knew that there was maybe like I would give the sequel like the chance, right? And the poster was just so, something was telling me that this was hype. Something was telling me about like the Insidious 2 poster with like the showdown with like the scary old woman and like the hammer. Like nothing, like no, there's no way this poster looks so hype without believing that they were gonna kind of fulfill some level of like genre hype and it being more than just like an upsetting horror movie, right? Which is what my preconceived notion was when I heard the ending about the first one, right? And so for me, I really believe, and this is me being like humble with myself, I really believe that like me being humble, even as like a James Wan fan, that I don't think I would have liked the first Insidious on its own, right? But it's because I had both of them. And again, and I'm also of the opinion that I can go either way of like whether I don't need things answered or I want things answered, right? Like I'm really like I can go from one side or the other. And so in this case, like I loved that things got answered, because I think that for me that was very much core to what is so wholesome about these two movies. And I'm not being sarcastic. Like I find they are very emotionally just genuine and sincere and really kind of wholesome movies. Like at their core, like they are fundamentally not just horror movies that are just meant to leave you feeling upset, which is what the first one is in danger of, like on its own. And I would have felt like that, right? And I feel like it is in a sense too, like when it was just existing on its own, but with Insidious 2 recontextualizing everything and kind of like completing the circle, I feel like it is just it is ultimately a story of like heroism, you know? Like there are a few things that are more rewarding to me on like a cinematic just experience than when you find out who was not like ringing the doorbell or like knocking at the door, right? From the first one. And it was Josh the whole time.
See, that kind of just makes it less scary.
But that's exactly the point.
I guess I'm just on the total opposite end of you guys, because I don't need anything past the first one. I'm good with the first. That's the thing. I love the way the first one ends, and that like mean, nasty like.
But see,
not
like
over yet.
you're
I'm
still
good with that. Like I don't need anything else to be explained. I don't need like I'm good with like what the first. I don't think the first one's perfect, but I don't need more explanation. Like the astral projection stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you're like, oh, what does that mean? But like, whatever.
But here's the thing
with it. It's a dumb.
The first one is still scary. Like in that watch, it's not like it's. I think I'm coming from more like a holistic experience where it's not like suddenly your memories or your experience of the first movie is now like retconned or that like the moment of when you watch the first one and finding it scary, it is no longer scary. Like that still was scary in that experience. But now that you have the second one, you have like a whole other layer. Like you get to also feel the hero, like this is fucking hype, right? And I think maybe
I guess it just loses some of the mystique.
That's fine. No.
Like to me, it does like reflect on the first one a bit, because I'm like, I know too much.
Yeah, I guess
now I don't really.
Yeah,
care
if you're coming
anymore.
from an angle of like you value like replay, right? And you would have liked to have revisited Insidious without without feeling like that was like that scariness was diluted. Then and so this is where I'm totally like. See, I have no counter arguments. Like, I don't need to say that you're wrong, or it's like that's a preference thing.
And I feel the same. Like, I don't think that I think I understand people that get more out of it with more going on, and like with the way the second one reflects back too.
I'll tell you.
And, I mean, I'll even say that I didn't really like the most recent one they did.
But that's fan fiction. He had nothing to do with that one.
But I did think. But I mean, Patrick Wilson made it, and he's an important part of the series. So But I didn't like that movie, but I did think it was interesting how they started, where it's like now it's in the future and like that family unit is broken apart. Like he's divorced from
inevitably
Rose Byrne's character and yeah, exactly. Right. And that's what, like, that was always a thing when I was a kid, when I'd watch horror movies and it would go to the end and it'd be like, well, what happens after? Like they just all like went through this hugely crazy event that nobody's going to believe. How do you even live a normal life? And I like that the fifth one kind of at least started being like, okay, let's start with that premise. But then I kind of think it just dropped.
He's also a bad husband at the beginning of movie one.
Yeah, and that's what kind of got me thinking about more of like just not that he's a domestic abuser. It's just like, okay, so like, is he questioning the like heteronormative family unit, because it is very much like he's just a bad father and a bad husband. He's just at work all the time. She's had to give up her dreams to just be at home. Like it does feel like he's interrogating that sort of like heteronormative family unit a bit in the first one. That I feel like it doesn't quite go all the way. So it's like, well, is he or is he not? Like, why even? Well,
that's why I like his arc, like throughout the two, where it almost kind of does the flip, where instead of like it kind of ending like horribly and they all like divorce and no one's happy, like at the end it's like he actually he becomes like a good husband and father, right? Like he actually like just believes his wife, and then he also kind of he realizes that like his attitudes and his behavior is also reflective of his own kind of burying his trauma, right? And so one of my favorite moments from the first one and from both of them is when he like kicks out the Elise, right? And then he's like kind of like huffing and puffing, and then he's in the room with comatose like Dalton. He's like, "Where'd you go? Did you go somewhere?" You know, and then it's like, "You just gotta like give me a sign," you know. And then he sees the pictures that Dalton drew, right? Like while like sleep drew, and then he just starts crying, and then just fully like comes to terms with the fact that like okay, shit's fucked up, and it's like I'm here, you know. And from there, he doesn't regress. He doesn't go like, but I don't believe these ghosts, you know. And I think that's something very beautiful of like not going like in a loop of like character development. And I just like that they made from that point on all the way to the end of the second, they maintained that. Like he didn't then regress into a domestic abuser. I was like, oh shit, now he's got out of it. It's like, for these two movies, this is his arc, and he has completed his arc, and now like the arc from that point on is to complete the quest. And there's more than like there are multiple characters, and so he doesn't need to then go through another catastrophe arc of like, am I now a domestic abuser? The second one is like he can just it's fine that he's trapped. And now it's like the other characters have to step up, and they'll get to him. And when he comes back, it's even more badass because like the first build actor is like sidelined until like the second half, and that's so fucking radical for him to like show up. And it's as if like no time has passed, and he's like all in, and he has not lost a step, and he is like this whole time he has stayed committed, you know, to getting back to his family. He's like been playing the piano, you know, like really terribly because that's how much he loves his wife and his kids, you know. And so it just felt I love the teamwork, and I love that when he did finally come back, and there was that very kind of like unsettling moment for a bit, even with the music, right, of her not trusting whether that's actually him.
You think it's gonna do like the same thing that the first movie did, right? And it's like, it's gonna be he's not,
and totally that's why it's so beautiful that he doesn't, you know, like he's just it is him, and I found that I just found it very refreshing, especially for horror, right? Because I feel like it actually becomes the trope of horror movies to then ruin things, which ironically is what the first movie does.
Okay, fair enough.
So the fact that the second one, it just ends it just lets them have it, and I think it's just so much more optimistic to just choose like the path that is almost becomes like cynically easy to go against, right? It was like, let's just ruin it again. And even right down to like the ending of Insidious 2, where Elise goes to like the Latino's house, and then we all noticed like the actual ending is that there's like a million like Darth Mauls, right, staring at her from the corner, right? It's like so like not scary and intentionally like almost like comical. It's like such a Scooby-Doo here we go again ending, right? Like, here we go.
So what do you think about that then in terms of James Wan? Like, why did James Wan do that? Like, why even include that coda then, other than to just be like, well, we're gonna make.
He never wanted to make another sequel. Right? That's the thing. Like he.
But then why include that ending?
I think he was playing into like the wackiness of it, because you know it ends with that giant title like that's Insidious, right? And so I think he was very much playing into like he was doing two things. He was doing both things. He was playing into like the whole horror movies ending on a cliffhanger, right? It's so deliberately like satirically redundant of like not just one, like, because his intention was not just one Darth Maul. It was just like a whole gang, right? A whole biker gang. And it's such a play on like that he brought his whole family now. Like it's like, oh, you think it's like, no, I'm mad, you know? And you don't need to see what happens because you know she's gonna be okay. You know it's like she's gonna kick ass, and it's gonna be just like, and I think he was both playing into that ending, like that trope, but also kind of having a very fun like twist on it where it's you don't feel like you've been cheated. And oh man, we never talked about the funniest moment in Insidious 2 and one of like the greatest comedic moments in just film history that I've ever seen, right? Which is the quesadilla joke. Sure. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And it's just like the commitment to the bit. And it's like, you would think when you go into the first Insidious, you would not think that the movies would unravel into such fun, right? But then the fact that like they do, and they really unsarcastically commit to it. It's like these like Specs and Tucker, right? So for them to, because they are the comedic relief, but they become like the comedic relief to such a comforting level, right? Because in the first one, they're like there, but you're still anxious, and you're still kind of, there's always this sense of dread that they're around, right? But what's great about the second is that by the time they get to like the second half, right, and they're really like going full on like, you know, Looney Tunes, right, and just trying to like fucking barely tranquilize her, like, you know, like a scary old woman possessed Josh, right? It's just, I don't know. I every time I watch it, it's just such a delight, especially with what's that other the guy's bearded guy, the other like glasses.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Glasses, beard.
Oh, the guy with the dice.
Yeah, dice guy. Yeah, dice
the guy
guy.
Who seems like
that guy.
Who seems like maybe he's a shyster. Yeah. He's like, this is how I talk to the dead.
But it works.
But it works. But like, does it work because of him, or does it work because of the ghost? You know?
Yeah.
Which I guess who cares?
Yeah.
I guess that's the same thing.
No, but it's like it's both. But he's legit. He's legit. But he's clumsy. He's like a bit of a klutz, and it's very endearing. And it's just.
Yeah, I didn't mind him actually. He was a nice addition.
See, I think he was a representation of like the end game wholesomeness of like that they come back to the second, and it's one of those things that make me so grateful that the second one does exist, because it how can you, and again, this is just how I felt about it, but like, how can you not feel just this kind of like, you know, like kind of going from the dread of the first to they're gonna get out of this, and they are, and it's gonna there's gonna be a lot of shenanigans, but then on the way you will have just these moments of such like fun clarity, where like the whole quesadilla thing, right? It's just like it's clearly not going well. Like it's like the jig is up. The jig is up, but he's still, he not only says quesadilla, like the safe, like the panic word, but he says it twice. Like you hear when Tux and Specker break in, you just have to listen. Maybe and for me, I was laughing so hard that I think I only got it the second go
it once, but
he says it a second time when they break in. Funny. He says it. Go rewatch it. He gets two of them in. It's like he's so committed. And this was like the guy Carl, and this was him just before in the van. He was saying like, no, I don't think that's important. I don't think
you'll know. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But like he goes back and says, you know what? All right, just like Josh believes, just like Josh did his arc of like, all right, I will believe my family and like I will believe in these ghosts. Like Carl is going like, you know what? I will believe in quesadilla. I will believe in like the secret word, because it's like, what the fuck, you know? Like I don't got, you know? It's like it just made me, it's just whole.
I do feel like there's like a little bit of in the first movie, it felt like the Tux and Specs and Tucker. There was like a little bit of a like tonal incongruity around. Like every time they were like, we're being funny, I was like, what are you doing? But by the time you're in the second movie, it feels like the whole thing is sort of ballooned to such proportions that I was like, oh, this all fits now. Yeah, it is now cohesive.
Yeah. You're and like right down to when they win, right? And then it was Tux and. What? Fuck no! Even
sorry, my fault. It's my fault.
Tux and
I think we should Tux and Specker.
Tux and Specker.
Yeah. So when Specker like breaks in, he's like, "Bring it!" You know, like he got tranquilized, right? And then and it's just like those extra bits, you know, like they're there, and they just these wholesome like decorative, not just decorative, but like really like they round out the whole thing. And so even right down to those two characters, where they're just such a comforting presence, and so he got like tranquilized, and you know things are gonna be okay when everyone's being chased like by like Josh, scary old possessed Josh, but then the camera like just pans back to the tranquilized Specker, right, and he's just like snoring. And you know it's gonna be okay. You just like, and you know, like this is what the movie is about now. It's no longer like this is gonna end terribly. It's like they're gonna get there, and especially I think on a replay value, which is where a lot of horror movies don't work. Is that you watch it once, it's upsetting, and then you don't feel like you ever need to rewatch it again. But in the case of the Insidious films, like why I can always come back to them is that there is more than just like the scary stuff. And even the scary stuff is like, I call it, you know, like art rock, right? It's like art jump scares, where it is like the art equivalent of jump scares. And where whenever people like kind of shit on the whole trope of jump scares, which is very valid, right? I will pinpoint to the other extreme, like the artistic extreme of it, which is like the James Wan art jump scares. And so from there, which is great to revisit because they're so kind of like creatively done, right? That they are not dependent on just the shock of like the one-time scare, right? Like not only do those hold up, but then there is the themes and the characters and the wholesomeness come back to it. And it's I think that's another reason why I appreciate it, because I didn't start off as a horror fan. It was only in like the last half decade to a decade where I just had a very specific appreciation for specific kind of horror movies. And so I like the idea of taking things that, or going into genres that don't necessarily have the kind of replay value or the definitiveness that you would kind of expect, right? But then those things end up being a lot more wholesome or a lot more emotionally resonant than you would have thought they had any right to be. But then, you know, certain individuals will come in and have very deliberate intents, right? Like James Wan came in wanting to do genre mashups. He went in wanting to not just do upsetting horror movies. He wanted to go in and make supernatural fantasy fun movies. And he even said where, like, for example, Malignant, right? He wanted to make a genre blender. He went in just hyping up how wacky it is. And so he was already telling everyone, oh, right, you're going to see it. So like, he was already giving everyone like the signs of like what were going to happen. And I guess like the whole, I won't reveal like what happens with the angle of the domestic abuse, right? But that even that, the way they like handle that is just so refreshing, because it's just like you would think that it's going to be one thing, but then it just ends up like, you know, and then the movie goes off into a whole kind of terrain that is just very invigorating and very exciting. And I think that's what I would just like that from. Yeah,
I agree. I think you never really know what's going to happen next in Malignant, and I think that's kind of like the biggest strength of it.
It's just so exciting. It's
like,
thrilling.
It's like a giallo thing at one point. It's like a paranormal thing, but then it's like Matrix.
Yeah,
it's like it's great. It's like one of those movies. You know, it's that cliche like just see it without reading anything about it. It's like the perfect movie for that.
Let me real quick just say thank you guys both for coming out and chatting about the Insidiouses and James Wan as a cultural force, and also all of our feelings. It's been really nice. I appreciate you coming out and doing this with me.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having us on. It was a lot of fun. Great. I'm happy to come back and debate other Insidious.
Yeah.
The other
There's plenty of other stuff to debate.
Yeah.